Welcome to Salt Lake Community College's Microsoft Forefront Implementations Lesson Learned iSeminar. Our featured guest speaker for today's presentation is Casey Moore, Director of Technology at Salt Lake Community College. If you're facing any audio difficulties, please dial in using the number on the audio section of the GoToMeeting screen. At the end of today's presentation, we will be taking questions posted in the web conference questions pane. The questions pane is available in the attendee control panel. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting IDM Engine.
Thank you, Tiffany. Colleagues, good afternoon. It's approximately 2 p.m. here in Cleveland, Ohio. On behalf of IDM Engine, I would like to thank approximately 20 institutions, including Malden Public Schools, St. Louis Community College, Utah State University, Bluefield State College, Bob Jones University, along with several other higher ed and K-12 institutions who dialed in for today's iSeminar to learn about Salt Lake Community College's Microsoft Forefront Identity Manager project implementation with IDM Engine. Today's featured speaker is Casey Moore, Director of Information Technology at Salt Lake Community College. For some of you who are unfamiliar with IDM Engine, IDM Engine is the #1 identity management platform in higher education and K-12 with over 50 clients, including Marshall University, Los Angeles Unified School District, Los Angeles Community College District, University of Southern Indiana, California State University, LA, Francis Howell School District, State of North Dakota, and of course Salt Lake Community College, as some of our members. After Casey's briefing, we will do a deeper dive into what IDM Engine is. And as an appreciation for your time today, we would also like to give some coupons away, featuring a $5,000 discount on self-service password reset implementation in case you would like to leverage us for that. Okay, at this stage, I'll pass the platform to our featured guest, presenter, Casey Moore. Over to you, Casey.
Thanks a lot, Vincent. Why don't we go ahead and just jump right into this. So just to first start about the college, we've got about 10 campus locations spread throughout the Salt Lake Valley. We on average see about 60,000 unique students annually. We are a banner school. And as part of our IT infrastructure, we're running, Microsoft Active Directory, Exchange. We've got SharePoint. We're using Forefront, which we'll talk about today. We're using the banner, the Illuminous portal, running version 4, looking at 5 probably next year. We use Canvas as our LMS. We've got a lot of Cisco and most of our wireless and wired network. So that is the college in a nutshell. So we'll talk a little bit about today is what we've, how we've kind of come to this FIM implementation, where we started. We'll talk about how this works, and I'll talk about some of the lessons learned and some of the things that we've kind of seen and learned as we've gone through our FIM implementation, and some of the things that we're looking to do in the future. So let's start with the history. We started using the Microsoft MIIS platform, the Microsoft Identity Integration Service, back in 2006, and that was a staff-only implementation. And then in 2009, we added all of our students, and then 2010, we upgraded to FIM 2010. The start of last year, we were, looking to actually update to Exchange 2010, which required some system upgrades inside the FIM environment. And we had a few known issues that we needed to have addressed. So we put out a bid to deal with some of the development and some of the things to do that upgrade and help train our staff a little bit more on the FIM development portion of it. And as part of that, CAP-CAI at the time, now IDM Engine, was awarded the result of that bid. So let's just talk about the solution, how it works, and what kind of connections that we have within our identity management system. So the biggest one, Banner, is set to be the master of most of the data inside of our identity management. in there we've got some views of the desired data that we wanted to have put into all of our other systems, Active Directory and all of that. You can see I've got a list on the staff and faculty view, includes things like their S number, or their unique number, as well as the user ID, job title, primary department title, all of those kind of things for their primary job roles. We also carry inside of that secondary titles and departments and staff qualifiers. That would be something like a full-time staff, a part-time staff, and things like that for our adjuncts and full-time faculty and all of that. So that's what's carried in the staff and faculty side. On the student side, similarly, we carry their S number, their user ID, what that email address is for the students, majors, and we also, for the student the term, we carry which term a class is in, which courses that they're taking, etc., so that we can use that to dynamically push group membership and all of that based on registration information inside Banner. We've also got a couple Delta views that contain the differences that happen, so that we're getting just minor changes throughout the day, and then in the evening the system runs a full sync just to make sure that everything is up to speed. Passwords are all managed right through when the students are logging into the Luminous MyPage portal. Once they make a change there, that fires a trigger, and that gets encrypted into the information that then FIM deals with to update password information and any other system that we want to manage that with. Additional data connections, we've got our Active Directory connection. From there, we're obviously able to have folks log in to computer labs, get to the wireless, to get into our virtual desktops, group membership, and all of that. On the Exchange side, we provide Exchange accounts for our staff and full-time faculty. Both students and adjuncts are given a Gmail address at our domain that we use there. Another connection that we have into our identity management system is our phone directory system. So this is a web-based / SQL database-driven system that contains phone numbers, campus location, phone number information that we can use to, one, get their phone numbers, and two, determine where people are located based on where that phone is. And then another connection we have is to the FIM portal, so the default stuff that Microsoft provides. We only leverage the FIM portal inside the IT group, so we're not using some of the self-service portion of that because that's all done on the Luminous side. But we use that to create the dynamic group membership information that's all out there. Again, we can use groups based on title, what department somebody's in, if they're part-time, full-time staff. We can do it based on their location, so we can create building-based distribution lists. Or for students and all that, we can use courses, CRNs, and all that they're actually taking to create memberships in different groups in Active Directory. On top of that, mentioning the secondary title, secondary department. So if people have more than one job, for example, a part-time or a full-time staff member who also teaches adjunct can be part of some of the stuff that they need for their classes as well. On top of that, we also have our help desk system, and that one we've changed since the last time I presented. We're now using ServiceNow, and so we're not really feeding that directly from inside the FIM system, but we are doing an Active Directory sync there, and then using our ADFS system, which the Campus CAI guys, or the IDM Engine folks, helped us implement. And then lastly, we're doing some stuff with Office 365, mostly for students here so they can get the full Office suite and all of that. But we're using the ADFS and DearSync thing there. But inside of FIM, one of the critical pieces there is, the DearSync automatically syncs up directory information for the students to be able to have an account information up there. The ADFS portion deals with the actual logon piece. And the piece that isn't normally dealt with two of those tools is license assignment inside of the Office 365 environment. So there are some scripts as part of the provisioning and deprovisioning process there that go in and assign the proper licenses to students, faculty, or staff, depending on those roles that they're in. So that's a high level of the data connection. So right here, I just wanted to kind of give a feel for how provisioning happens. And we've got 3 different basic processes that can happen to deal with how people come into the system. So the standard staff and faculty process, and this works for an adjunct, but because we have a pretty large adjunct population, and some of them aren't fully entered into Banner and into the payroll system until 2 or 3 weeks into a semester, which wasn't going to work from an identity management and system and getting people provisioned properly. So we've built that second process that I'll talk about. But most people will come in through here. They're added to general person in the HR system. And then the critical piece is once they're assigned an active job in the payroll environment, that will then create their MyPage account, their Luminous account, and then that shows up in the Banner employee view from FIM, which will create their Active Directory account and start provisioning group membership and all of that kind of stuff. That adds, that updates distribution lists, etc. for staff and faculty. For the adjuncts, we built another process to get them added into the system quicker before their contracts and all that were signed and in place. They're first, again, they get added to general person in HR because they know that that's happening. But once the employee was marked as a faculty inside the SIA INST, which would assign them to a course inside the MyPage portal and all of that kind of stuff. I'm sorry, that's next. Their MyPage account will have been created once they get set up in the SIA INST. Next, to assign them to the course, the SSA section, that was the piece will then push them automatically into that FIM view, that employee view, and create the Active Directory account and make that happen before they were actually added to have an active job and have all of their contracts signed there. And then lastly, for students, a student gets accepted. Once they're registered for a course in the specific semester, I think we've got to set a week before the semester starts, the provisioning starts to happen and create all of the account information for those students. The same information shows up then in the view that FIM looks at, creates the account in Active Directory, puts them into the groups that they want, puts them into any other distribution lists or groups that we want to have deal with there. And you can see the color coding thing there as far as which things are just general events, which things are done manually or done through registration events, and which things are automatically happening inside the FIM environment. Another part of this is deprovisioning, and we actually do fully deprovision accounts so that they no longer have an Active Directory account, and we actually archive off and delete their home drives, mailboxes, etc., get put into a PST that we can then access later. So for employees, once their job record expires or is removed, that they are going to get set as inactive in that view that comes inside, that feeds FIM. That will then disable the account, and we've got a timer set on that so that it sets that way for 7 days. This will allow for changes happening in payroll or anything like that, and we wouldn't automatically delete the account, delete all of those things. And so this we kind of set up as the time that worked out best for us. And then after that 7 days, it gets set to terminated. At that point, the FIM processes will go through, archive off their home drives, and one of the changes we actually made on this recent implementation with the IDM folks was we, instead of archiving that off to a PST, we actually disconnect the user account in Exchange. So we're leaving that in Exchange rather than archiving it off to a PST, because we can then go back using his Exchange administration tools and recover that information if we need to reassociate it with an account. So at that point, the accounts are fully deprovisioned in Active Directory and some of the other systems outside of Banner to deal with their Active Directory accounts. For students, similarly, once they're no longer registered for a course plus an extra semester, so we leave their account active in there for a semester afterwards to deal with issues regarding any course things that they needed to make up or whatever, so we weren't completely shutting off their accounts. That's set to at least leave them in there for a semester afterwards. At that point, once they hit that point, they're set to a terminated status in the Banner student view. The account gets flagged for deletion, and it gets archived. Similarly, what we're doing with staff and faculty, we're obviously not giving them Exchange accounts, so we don't need to worry about that part. That exists out in Google for them still. So let's just talk about some of the things we do to customize where these accounts are all provisioned inside of our Active Directory environment. So depending on the department, we can go through this config file. It's just a basic text file, and we specify what the department should come from Banner. Once that shows up, it sees that. It creates them in each of the OUs that we've specified. If it doesn't see one that it matches, there's a default OU that it'll place people into, and until something matches, or we work with HR or payroll, I should say, to update our config and then put them into the right OU that we would expect. For students, you can see that config file down on the bottom. It's really pretty basic. We've got different OUs based on the last name of the students. So we weren't going to do the same department information. We just kind of put them into containers for students, just so that when we have, the 50,000 student records that we've got out there, we didn't have to look through all of those. We can go into just a container to look at each one. For the Exchange information, so that we could determine which store we wanted to put different people's mailboxes in, we're using things based on their last name. So we created some different stores, and we have a config file here that just says, all right, depending on the last name, we have a couple of different stores, and the configuration file we can play with a little bit, but you can see where the start and the end, and in this case we've got A, B, A and A are all in one store, but then like if you look at C and D, we've got two last names in that, depending on how we kind of configure that, or at least how we've configured our Exchange environment. So based on these rules, when a staff or faculty or are provisioned, they'll be put into each of the store that we would expect. And then another configuration file that we have allows us to determine where we want to provision home drives for staff and faculty as well as students. Here you can see based on the campus location that comes in from their location information from the phone directory, we will put them into one of these different containers on where we want based on the location that they're found. And then at the bottom you can see for students, we're putting them all in a similar location, again based on their last name, where that falls. So one of the tough scenarios, and and it's always one we still continue to kind of process to clean up and make better, is dealing with people with different multiple and changing roles. So example of staff and faculty or who are students. How we've decided to set that up is, one, if they were a student at one point but now they've become faculty, we will deprovision their student account in the student Active Directory, child OU is what it is, and we will then recreate a new one in the staff directory, but their information still exists, so we can put them into all of the student groups, et cetera, that they have, but they'll only have the one account in the parent domain. And then we had to deal with staff and faculty who are quit but are still students, right? Then at that point, we remove their staff access automatically, remove that initial account, move the account to the student domain, and give them access to all of the groups, et cetera, that they would have. The one part of that process, the manual piece would be, we'd have to, if the student requested it, we could work on getting any of their old files that they should have access to and move them to the new student account if needed. Another thing we definitely have to deal with is dealing with exceptions. So we've got a configuration file that allows us to set up, and in fact, in this case, there are some attributes that we're using, the extended attributes in Active Directory. For example, if we have a new employee that we want to provision before payroll has finished all of their paperwork and added them into the system to get their account created, we can set one of the extension attributes or one of the extended attributes in Active Directory to flag it with new employee so that the FIM system sees it in one of the OUs that's normally managed, leaves it alone so that it won't automatically deprovision or wonder what to do with that account. Other ones, we may have somebody whose job is ending, but we want to leave the account out there for either reasons that there's something going on litigation-wise or whatever. We can set the flag with this: do not delete, save, or retain, and then the system won't automatically remove account information if we've got somebody that's in that configuration. So back to the end result, and I kind of mentioned this as I've been talking up to this point, but the system's managing around 50,000 active users on a regular basis as people come and go throughout the system. Where the Delta processes that are happening regularly take about 13 to 14 minutes to run to just deal with the changes as people are making changes in the system. It's currently running about every 30 minutes, but it doesn't take that long. And then at night, there's a full synchronization that happens that just makes sure that everything's in sync, anything that may have been missed in the Delta. And then we're able to, as I mentioned, create dynamic group memberships through the FIM portal. So you can see a couple of example ones where we've got somebody that's taking an accounting 2510 class that creates an Active Directory group that then we can then assign rights to for file directories, or for our virtual desktop environment, allows them to see particular applications or whatever we want to use those group memberships for. And then also you can see on that right side, this is an example in our academic computing department, we're saying, all right, they're part of the IT department and their title matches some of these other things. If they meet those criteria, then they're automatically put into the group that we would expect them to have access to. You grant them access to the network file shares and all of those things automatically without having to have any interaction on the IT side. So let's just talk about lessons learned, some of the recommendations we have for if you were to kind of be looking at doing an identity management system like this. But this is a great project for outsourcing some of the development work, especially if this is something you haven't done before. Another big one is involve staff from outside of IT as part of the new processes and all of that. And we've made some missteps as we did this over the years and try to include as many people as we did. But then after you go live with some of this, some other folks who didn't get involved are piping up saying, "Hey, I didn't, we weren't part of this, or we didn't realize it." I mean, I can still tell you right now, we push our payroll folks on a regular basis to try to get accounts created on a timely manner when people put those things in. And so it's one of the ones we still struggle with, is getting people created in there so that accounts are created properly and we're not having to use our exception processes to create accounts manually and then wait for it to sync up after the fact. Understand your provisioning and deprovisioning process. Understand where what's going on with that, and so you know when it's going to happen and when it's not, so that you have a good understanding, and your help desk and your technicians all understand how that works. And lastly, understand where your master sources of record exist. What's the key piece of information, so that when somebody calls in and says, "Hey, my location isn't right," make sure that your help desk knows where does that need to be updated, so that people know where to update information or where to assign tickets to get things updated in the system. You can kind of see there. I put an example spreadsheet that we put together that was dealing with all of the different user attributes. Where does it come from? How often is it updated, and all of those kind of things to kind of help us plan and communicate that information out to our folks. I mentioned exceptions, and this is a big one. Is always, you need to plan for exceptions, and you're going to have volunteers who may not have an active job record. How are you going to deal with those accounts? You're going to have to deal with contractors that need to be added or given access to some of your environment while they're in here doing work. So there's just always a lot of different people who may not fit into the normal, employment student model. And for one of these, like we've created an OU structure of FIM managed groups and another one for non-FIM managed groups so that we can put people into groups and grant access to groups outside of what can automatically be dealt with from some of these things where somebody, again, isn't a staff member or isn't a faculty member, but again needs to have access to some of these groups. And we added the functionality to create a manual account with the employee ID entered in there, and I showed that a couple of slides back, where the employee ID is there, and once the FEMSys process runs, their payroll and their active job record shows up, it automatically sees that account, matches the two up, and then starts to create to deal with some of the automatic group memberships and things like that I mentioned before. The other lesson learned here is this is a complex process. A lot of different systems feed into it. A lot of different departments are reliant on that. It does take a lot of TLC, and am I going to say that everything is perfect with how our FIM environment works? No, it's not, but it does a really good job on a lot of things, and it's handling a lot of account creation automation for us on a regular basis. So from that perspective, it works great, but it does take TLC. You got to watch the system, see if you're seeing errors, see if, hey, what's going on, or like I mentioned, maybe the payroll department changes the description for a specific department. Well, that automatic group membership will change if that happens. So you need to communicate to them, hey, this is how this works, so that you can make sure if they're making changes, they let somebody at the help desk know to update that group information so that people don't lose access to their files temporarily while that gets addressed. And then this archiving home drive thing, amazing. We've seen where the archiving process fumbles where it's trying to archive somebody's home drive, and you wouldn't. I'm amazed at how deep somebody's drive structure was, or there was a weird character in it that the archiving process would struggle with. So all of that kind of comes back. You just need to plan on having, kind of watching it and see how it works. The CAP-CAI, the CAP-CIDM folks helped us build some auditing scripts so that we can go back and see, all right, are there any student accounts who didn't get provisioned to home drive that we would expect, or somebody that didn't get deprovisioned that we would have expected? So there's some really nice auditing things that we can do to kind of go back and make sure that everything's in sync like we would expect it to. And then you can, using those auditing scripts, feed those into another automated process to recreate or to create anything that's missing or to archive something that hasn't been orphaned. If you're working with a partner, one of the great things is to make sure you're meeting regularly and you have a nice project site that you can assign takeaways or tasks for each group. I've had a couple of different engagements with different external partners, and having a site that you all have, and we have a SharePoint site that we've used, and you can assign tasks, list where everybody is, have a nice calendar and all that. Really helpful on making sure that everybody's on the same page, issues can be addressed and all of that. Make sure that documentation is part of your statement of work. Make sure that, documentation not only of how the system is configured, but documentation on the code and all of that is as well built in. Make sure that that's there. When building a test environment, try to make it as close to your production environment as possible. That's tricky, trying to associate something with a banner and getting the changes and all of that kind of stuff. But we have it. There's a test environment there, and just make sure you've got that reflecting your production environment as much as you possibly can, so that you can test everything. And have well-documented test cases so you can work through them. We've had a couple there where we didn't test specific scenarios, and then as we go into production, you're like, oh yeah, this situation wasn't handled. And then this last one, the system needs a couple of skill sets. You have the basic system administration. This is the day-to-day administration piece. But then there's the development piece where there's a Visual Studio project out there with code that's dealing with some of the FIM stuff. And so it takes a couple of different skill sets there. And we still, with this last engagement where we had CAP-CIDM do this, they had to give us some training on how that code on the back end works. And that's one that we still haven't completely, jumped on. We've gotten a lot better. These guys have helped a lot, kind of get us better familiarity with how that part of FIM works. it's really neat to see how it works. And at least as a result, this last time we are much more familiar with the system as it's currently designed than we ever have been. In the future, at least some of the things that I've kind of got here is we're going to continue to look for new ways to leverage the FIM, see how we can push things out to our library systems for OneCard and all of that. And then we've actually started to do this, expanding the use of the FIM portal, delegating that out to some of our lab coordinators, allowing them to create some of these dynamic groups for courses and all that they deal with on a more regular basis to get access for students to specific things there. And I think that is the end of my presentation. So I think we're ready to deal with any questions or comments that anybody might have.
Thanks, Casey. Yeah, I think at this point we will go ahead and open up the lines to take any questions. And give me 1 second. Casey, can you hear me?
I can.
Great. All right, I think lines are open. We are ready to take any questions. Okay, I think a couple of questions on the question panel that we've received, Casey. So if I think there are quite a few people in the audience who do not have the mic, so feel free to send the questions across on the question panel. There's a question coming in from Scott. He's asking about hosting. He's asking Casey if you have outsourced FIM for hosting, or are you hosting it on site?
Yeah, and our FIM is hosted locally on campus.
Okay. All right, Scott, I hope that answers your question. If you have any follow-up questions on that, please feel free to ask. Okay. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions. So let me see. I think there's another one coming up. I think there's a question from Ralph. He's asking if you. No, sorry. There's a question about ADFS and Office 365 with FIM. Casey, so do you want to throw some more lights on that? Hmm?
Sure. So at least what we're doing, most of the Office 365 stuff is going to happen we are running the DeerSync. Microsoft and IDM Engine recommended that we continue just to do the normal DeerSync utility box to synchronize user account information up to the Office 365 portion, and then we're using ADFS, and that just points right to our Active Directory system. So FIM is updating AD. Mm-hmm. We're using both the internal and 2 internal and 2 external for our ADFS environment. The big thing that FIM is doing. The big thing that FIM is doing there is if there are some PowerShell scripts creating or assigning licenses to students, faculty, and staff, depending on their roles from FIM, then given the right access to whatever we would expect them to have.
Sorry, there's a little disturbance in the line as well. Thanks, Casey. Jane, I hope that answered your question. Chuck from Raritan Valley Community College is one of our esteemed member. Has also asked, has raised a hand. Chuck, if you can hear me, I've unmuted you. Do you have a question by any chance? And I believe Bob has also asked a question. Bob, can you hear me? I don't think they have a mic. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can. Okay. Chuck is saying no mic, so he's just listening. Thanks, Chuck. Bob saying, how long did the FIM implementation take? Again, he doesn't have a mic, so he will not be able to talk. But Bob, I hear you. And Casey. So Bob's also. Let me tell you about Bob and Chuck. They're our esteemed member, just like you, Casey. Bob, I can always make you speak to Casey after this iSeminar as well. But what Bob is asking is, how long did this implementation take?
It's a kind of a tough question to answer because we obviously had the different phases that we've had over the years. The initial implementation for staff and faculty, I think that took about 4 or 5 months. A lot working remotely with the partner that we were working with at that point in time, and then a couple of the upgrades. Just and the student one took us about 2 or 3 months there because we had a lot of the infrastructure. Just needed to change some of the attributes pieces. When we engaged with Campus EAI, this was the end of last year, and to finish that project, I think we took a couple, 3 months, I will say, on outside to work out, because they made some pretty significant changes to the initial implementation at that point. So probably 2 or 3 months there.
So, and I understand where Bob's coming from, because they recently leveraged IDM Engine to implement FIM, and we are currently implementing FIM for them. Bob, I hope that, okay, yes, he's saying, okay, thanks. So I think that answers the question. Thanks, Casey.
Yeah.
And Bob and Chuck, if you're listening, Casey is very referenceable. And I can always get him on a quick call with you folks, for any lessons learned or, best practice sharing or any questions that you might have, about the FIM implementation. I can always get him on a call with you guys, so don't worry about it. Right. I think we close to an hour. Do we have any more questions? Okay, I'll take the silence as a good thing. So let's give everybody a couple of more minutes, Casey.
Sounds good.
All right. Mm-hmm. And while we have everyone there, I just want to quickly talk a little bit about pricing as well. So costing-wise, the bottom line, if you do a FIM implementation for the password management piece, apart from the Microsoft licensing, which you may already own the costing for, can be discounted to something less than 10 grand. That's only for the SSPR piece, to give you the order of magnitude, for the SSPR. Similarly, on the provisioning and deprovisioning side, slightly more complex, because you're talking about the business processes and business rules and some of the engineering that goes around the implementation. So these tend to be again anything between 50K to 50 grand to about 75 to 80 grand. Again, this has a lot to do with the requirement. What are the target systems that you would want to provision the users into? What is the source of truth, or what have you. So we usually do a separate session, a scoping session, to come at a templatized cost. Again, user base ranging from 5,000 to about 30,000. We usually have anything between 50 to 80 grand. So that's the costing for this initiative. And I can see that you don't have any questions as well on on best practices. So I think at this point I would like to take this opportunity to thank Casey. Casey, thank you for and we appreciate the time that everyone has taken out of your schedule to share your experiences with the rest of your colleagues from all over America. So again, we appreciate everyone's time. And Casey, thank you. Some of the folks will request for your contact info. So if you're okay with it, we will we'll go ahead and share it.
That's fine.
Thank you. Again, for about 20 institutions that have dialed into today's briefing, sorry, is there a question? No, okay. So, like I said, for 20 institutions that have dialed into today's briefing, we appreciate your time you've taken out. If you are not sure who to get in touch with, the right person would be me. My name is Vincent, or whoever invited you for this party. We would be sending out follow-up emails along with the presentation that Casey has shared today. We'll share the presentation to all the attendees. And if you're interested, we would be happy to schedule a one-on-one session with our technical team to take this initiative forward for you folks. We would also, at this point, like to mention that we are primarily focused on forefront identity manager implementations. Microsoft is, of course, launching their new release next year, which is going to be called Microsoft Identity Management Manager, or MIM. We would also specialize in that. We would start sharing the literature and language as and when Microsoft provides it to us. All right. On that note, thank you, everyone. With that, this is Campus IDM signing off. Appreciate your time. Casey, thank you.